So it's good to be here. My name is Borja. I've been a Datadog for a couple of years, and today I'm happy to be here to tell you a little bit about observability pipelines and how, if you have never heard about observability pipelines, how they can help you take control of your observability data. Now, if you go back far enough in time, Ilan was saying you had monolithic applications. You had maybe a host running your application, generating some metrics, CPU, memory, network, throughput, storage, maybe a database generating some logs and some metrics. And that was it. It was a beautiful world. You had everything that you needed to be able to debug and understand your applications and your infrastructure. But if you fast forward to today, the situation doesn't look like that, right? Your applications, even the more simple ones, probably are some sort of distributed microservices. They're running on hosts, maybe running on containers on top of a scheduler or orchestrator like Kubernetes. You're also likely using some data stores, caches, maybe some data services from your cloud providers, SaaS, software as a service. So the complexity has increased a lot as to what applications look like today versus what they looked like 10, 15, 20 years ago. I think I didn't get updated there. OK, that one. Even more, we're no longer generating just metrics and logs, right? We are also generating distributed traces. We're generating errors, call stacks. We're generating profiles from our applications. So the amount of data that these applications, these hosts, this infrastructure is generating is a lot worse than, or a lot more, rather a lot better than what it was a few years back. And this data is not only going to be sent to Datadog for us as developers and operators to consume to understand our applications, but more likely than not, you have a security team that's knocking on your door and saying, hey, those logs that the application is generating, how can I get them? Because they'd be great if I could feed them into my SIEM, my security information event management tool, to be able to see, make sure that we don't have any vulnerability or attacks. And then you'll have, a week later, somebody knocking on your door and saying, hey, because we operate in this regulated environment, we need to keep 1 year worth of logs in our cold storage so that we comply with this regulation. And then a week later, you have another team that comes by and says, oh, for business, we'd like to create these custom dashboards where we can see how our users come to our website, how they use our services, how they become our customers. And we could really use some of these metrics and some of those logs. If you could format them this way and send them to our data warehouse, we'd really appreciate it. And so then you're tasked with collecting all this data that comes from all these different sources, transform it in a way and delivering it to other systems. And what does the solution look like? Well, if you're going to do it yourself, then it looks like you're building tools, that monitor code, that deploy tools, that build tools for development monitors, for monitoring deployment tools, for tools. Hopefully, you're not doing that. And my one key takeaway for these 10 minutes that I'm going to be up on stage is that if you find yourself in a situation where you have different teams or you're being tasked with collecting tools, collecting data, observability data, transforming that data, enriching that data, and delivering it into another system, please don't do it yourself. Of course, needless to say, it is the title of my talk. The solution to do this are observability pipelines. Now, observability pipelines are high-performance streaming pipelines that are purposely built for observability data. They will allow you to reduce cost, aggregate, separate, indexing from archiving, ensure compliance, standardize the data so data is consistent for the security team and for the business team and for the compliance team and for developers and operators, enrich the data with useful context, and ultimately simplify the management and the access of this data. So in the 6-7 minutes that I have left, if you're interested in following this approach to standardizing and the collection, transformation, and delivery of data, I want to give you 6 tips. When you're shopping around for observability data tooling or technology, what are the things that you should look into to say, does this check the box or not? Now, these are 6 things that I think are very important. There's more to it, but in the time that I have, I think this is a good takeaway. So first and foremost, the first 3 are relatively straightforward. The collection. you need to choose observability pipeline technology that allows you to collect the data from where the data is being generated. Pretty straightforward. Today, that's going to be application logs, metrics, and traces, most likely from containerized environments, containers, your Kubernetes. You may want to collect data from the cloud services, the cloud providers themselves for authentication, streaming, storage, and serverless, potentially. And you may also, Ilan mentioned this earlier, want to collect data from IoT or sensors that are in the field. So how do you collect this data from those IoT devices? The second thing you want to make sure that the technology supports is the transformation. This is a key aspect of our observability pipeline. You want a flexible, fast, and type-safe transformation language that allows you to transform the data as it's being generated. Common transformations allow you to sample, filter, and reduce events. Maybe you're not interested in every log line. Maybe you just want to count the number of logs that are similar to a given one. You want to be able to convert logs to metrics, scrub, and remove PII, personal identifiable information from the data, so your names, addresses, phone numbers, social security numbers, and so on. You're likely also going to want to enrich the data that is being generated with an additional set of data, say geolocation data, or potentially you have a CSV that is able to augment and enrich the data. And you want to enforce a common schema so that the data looks the same, again, for all the actors in the picture. The third thing that you want to look at, and also a relatively simple one, is you want to make sure that as you collect and transform the data can be sent to the tools that your security team, your business team, your developers, your operators, your compliance teams are using. So more likely than not, that's going to be logging, monitoring, and tracing solutions like Datadog, security tools like SIEM vendors, archiving tools, your S3s, your Google Cloud Storage, your Azure Blob, I think they call it, event streaming, your Kafkas, your RabbitMQs of the world, data warehouses, your Snowflakes and Redshifts of the world, and also local monitoring services like Prometheus or Elastic that you may be using. So we now have been able to collect the data, transform the data, and deliver the data. So we have three more things that we should look for in observability pipelines. One of them is that the observability pipelines themselves can actually be deployed in a manner that is easy and convenient for you and your organization. Today, you may be fully on the public cloud. You want to choose a technology that allows you to very easily deploy the observability pipelines in the public cloud. Maybe you're fully on-prem to take advantage of potentially cost savings or regulatory concerns. You want to choose a technology that allows you to very easily deploy the observability pipelines on your on-premises deployments and environments. Or maybe you have a hybrid approach. So you want to choose technology that, again, allows you to very simply deploy the pipelines in that hybrid infrastructure. Regardless of how and where you're deployed, the one thing that you need to look for is centralized configuration and management. If I'm managing, say, dozens of observability pipelines deployed across my public and private infrastructure, and every time I need to update or change something, I have to SSH or log in or change a configuration file for every one of them, then that defeats the purpose. We go back to square one. I'm already, as the asks keep on coming, I have to go back and make sure that the schemas are enforced for every pipeline. So the one key aspect you need to look for is that centralized configuration and management. Another thing is that it needs to be designed for performance and reliability. Now, I had a fancy graph here for performance that would show you how our observability pipeline technology is much more performant than our competitors, but I was looking for something that was more impactful. And I'm a Formula One fan, so I chose a Formula One car to showcase performance. What is more performant than a Formula One car, right? And then some of you may be wondering, if you follow Formula One, it's like, why is that not a Red Bull car up there, right? They're winning the races. But then I looked at the Sydney Grand Prix, and guess what? It was a Ferrari car that actually won the Sydney Grand Prix. So if you're looking for performance in Australia, go with the Formula One Ferrari car. What I mean by performance is that, say that your security team is saying, hey, great, you set up the observability pipelines. Can you get the data over to our SIEM solution? You say, yeah, of course, it'll be right there. And then they get the data, and they're like, hey, this data is like 3 hours late. The timestamps, they're just getting, like, why are we not getting the data live? Now, what are the observability pipelines? They get the data, they transform it. By the time they send it over, there's a 3-hour delay. Do you think the security team is going to be satisfied with that? No, right? They're trying to detect security attacks, vulnerabilities. They need the data instantaneously, right? So you cannot take that 3 hours to say, oh, you'll get the data. It's going to be a little bit late. Just wait for it. So the observability pipeline technology has to be performant. And it also has to be reliable. I also struggle with this one. And I reached out to a friend, like, what's reliable? I'm like, how about one of those old school Casio watches? Those things, they were as reliable as they get. So there you have it. What do we mean by reliable? Say that you have a business team that's also interested in the data to be able to craft and create custom business reports. If you tell them that, you're only going to get 76% of the data flowing your way, well, those dashboards are not really going to be very reliable. The data they cannot trust that data, right? So whatever observability pipeline technology that you choose has to be reliable. You have to make sure that they get all the data, that the data is correct. And last but not least, the one thing that you should look for when shopping around for an observability pipeline technology is that you need to be able to monitor it. Like the rest of your applications and your infrastructure, it is important to be able to monitor the health of our observability pipelines. You need to be able to get metrics for transformations, performance, throughput, and delivery. You need to be able to create dashboards to get a full picture of the pipeline health. Monitors that alert you if something goes wrong, compliance monitors to make sure that potentially that PII data is being scrubbed correctly, cost monitoring and insights. So you need to understand how your pipelines are behaving and how they're running. Needless to say, we have a best-in-class solution for observability pipelines, but that's not the key takeaway from my talk. Again, I'll be happy leaving today if you stop doing it yourself and look at the technology as a whole. For Datadog, our solution is built on an open source technology that we created called Vector. It allows you to collect for just about any source. Our transformation engine is very powerful. It is performant and reliable, and you can ultimately send the data to just about anywhere that you'd be interested in sending it. That concludes my talk. Please do join us for a discussion on these topics, democratizing observability, later today at 4:15 p.m. And thank you so much.